Last week we started a series on the book of Exodus. We introduced the story of the midwives, Shifra and Puah. You guys remember that? Were you here? Who acted out of this resistance in the edict of Pharaoh, who's made an edict to genocide the Israelites, to kill every firstborn male. Shifra and Puah had creative resistance in how they protected the babies and lied to Pharaoh and said that the women, they're too vigorous, they give birth too quickly for us to get there, we can't stop them, and how their act of resistance inspires us to really have a moral courage, which I believe right now was obviously very timely, that we really do need a moral revolution in our day. We need a moral revolution that crosses all faiths, all political groups, all tribes, all people to unite as we the people. As we've talked about before, no one's coming to save us, right? Like the people. There's a famous Spanish saying for those who have endured oppressive leaders that it's only the people that will save the people, right? And so there's a moral courage that needs to happen. And then we talked about that there's a sense of creativity in the mundane of how we can resist. This week, we kind of move from that act of seeing that God is really concerned with people who live on the margins. He's a little, Scripture shows that he sides with the poor. He sides with those on the margins. It's not like when people are on the margins and vulnerable, he's always sharing his characters to side with those on the margins. So much so that God is willing to intervene and squeeze himself into time and space in a way to step in with his eternal nature and speak language that humans can understand so that we and those on the margins can be free. And that's the angle I want to come to you this morning, that today I want to talk about how God sometimes shows up unexpectedly. He shows up unannounced, unrequested to change us so that the world can be changed. So before we get into Exodus 3, I kind of want to just move through the story with you today. Nothing too cute, and just real exegesis of the passage, which is just to pull out what's there. Before we get in there, I just want to share the backstory of Exodus 2, because there's some amazing women in Exodus 2 that we cannot skip over, right? So to paint the scene, remember, this is a picture between life and empire. There's like a battle and tension going on between mothers and policy, naming children and erasing a people. That's the kind of the themes and the tensions that are arising in Egypt. Pharaoh has a decree to kill all the firstborns, and there's this underground network of women with small acts of resistance. And one of those women that was giving birth, that we talked about last week, was a woman named Jochebed. Jochebed is Moses' mom. We don't see her name here, but we see it later. And she birthed Moses and hid him for 3 months. And when she couldn't hide him any longer, she decided to put him in a basket, put tar over it to disguise the baby in the basket, and let the baby go through the river. Now, a lot of us think Prince of Egypt, how cute, the river, and the river's a sign of deliverance. No, the river was the place where all the bodies, the babies, were going to. This was not like this is where the bodies go. This basket was so not so much of like, oh, how hopeful of a release. I think it was a gamble of life and death. It was a gamble of a sense of like, what will happen to this, God? I don't know. I relinquish control. This is an act of a sense of resistance, because pharaohs of this world, they want us to believe that it's not possible to escape their orders. Pharaohs of the world and pharaohs then want us to believe that it's not possible to escape their orders, but the midwives show us that this can be done. So Jochebed says, can I find another way to subvert Pharaoh? Can I subvert Pharaoh? Can I find another way? And what's amazing, she relinquishes control, even if it means her son will be raised by another woman. And Jochebed stops at nothing short to save her boy's life and give one more shot of life before he's taken. And in the story, Pharaoh's daughter, which we later know is named Bithiah, say Bithiah. There you go. Got to learn these names. And now Bithiah, Pharaoh's daughter, I imagine, can I put on my sanctified imagination for a moment? I imagine that royal royal daughters didn't witness the dirty side of empire too much. I imagine they were a little bit sheltered to a degree. I imagine that they kind of had a bit of sheltering. And I imagine Pharaoh's daughter went unseen as Pharaoh's very busy. Probably went very unnoticed as a royal child. But yet I think somehow as she goes down to bathe as a ritual, whether it was a ritual for bathing or a ritual of purity cleansing, I'm not sure. But she goes to bathe in the Nile, and I bet you she sees these babies floating down this river. So I believe she begins to awaken to the dirty side of empire and starts to realize that she is complicit in this. That her privilege is making her complicit in this act that her father and this empire is doing to the Israelites. And while she's bathing, she sees a basket pass. She asks her servant to go get the baby and bring it to her. And she takes it in. And she asks the servant, actually, Moses' sister comes up to Pharaoh's daughter and says, hey, do you want a Hebrew woman to nurse this baby? She says, yes, please. Goes and gets Moses' mom, Jochebed, and nurses her. So now Moses is being brought up by Pharaoh's daughter. And after all, she recognizes she knows exactly what's happening. Saving Moses was both like this act of rebellion and simultaneously like a little bit of act of privilege, knowing that she could afford the mercy of getting caught with this. So I imagine just with me, this young boy, Moses, growing up, right? He's raised by this adopted mom who's maneuvering on the inside and beginning to share both his dual identity, teaching Moses, this is who your people are, and yet you're an Egyptian. This is who you are. You're a Hebrew, but yet you're Egyptian. And I imagine that he learns a lot from her. Parents, we cannot underestimate like the power of our example in the formative years of our children, right? Like sometimes it's hard for me right now to see everything going on and imagine a new heavens and a new earth, to imagine like God's going to make all things new, like restoration, right? And I know we saw a lot of little kids running around here, and I imagine they belong to some of you. And sometimes it's hard to imagine that. But what I can imagine is I can see some of you eating with people not like you and your child growing up to work on immigration policy. I can see your children seeing you take care of the poor and your children one day rising up to change the healthcare system. Because there is something that our little small acts as parents and church community can catapult for our children to make possible what we only dream about. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Moses grows up inside this machine that's trying to erase him, right? Moses was raised by Pharaoh's household. Moses was pampered to a degree, but not soft, I would say. He probably had a lot of culinary fine meals. He's living in the palace, and he goes from palace to the wilderness, and as we're going to see in a moment, which I think is amazing because only God could orchestrate that the one who's going to take down the empire was educated on the empire's dime. That the one who's going to take down empire, the one who's going to take down the oppression of Pharaoh, had to know both a Pharaoh mentality and he had to know a Hebrew mentality. And so I believe that there's some people here just like Moses, just like these women, Bithia, just like those midwives who need to birth, midwife alongside people who will one day birth a new generation, that we are too. If anybody's like me and on the cusp of that midlife crisis age, in your 40s, or you will, or maybe you're getting in your late 30s, it is time for us to be investing in the next generation. It's time for us to play the background and to invest and bring up others who know who they are and whose they are. So here we are, Pharaoh, raised by empire, raised by Pharaoh's daughter, raised with the sensibilities of Jochebed. The narrator of Exodus says that then Moses went to the brickyard. He sees his own people forced into labor, and he desired to know his people, be curious about his roots, and then that injustice of slavery outraged him. And Moses reacts and kills an Egyptian taskmaster. for mistreating one of the Hebrew slaves. Clumsy, rage, panic, and he runs from Pharaoh, but because he runs also from the realization that he's capable of this, I think. And then that gives me to chapter 2. So the first chapter of the story, A Long Road to Liberation, kind of forgot to tell you about the slides, was for chapter 1. That was liberation and oppression and liberation. Chapter 2 is all about refinement. Moses now goes into Midian, right? Just so you guys following me with the story, all right? Doing a little storytelling today. Moses goes to Midian and becomes a shepherd. Later on in the New Testament, it breaks up. The Bible's always obsessed with like numerology. I don't know if these are literal numbers, probably not. But it says the first 40 years of Moses in Egypt, he was 40. And then he went into Midian to become a shepherd for 40 years. And then his last 40 years is when he's 80. He's going back to Pharaoh and confronting Pharaoh and setting his people free. So there's this breakup of this life. And it's interesting because the first half of his life is what we just covered was construction, right? He's constructing a life. He's constructing a worldview. He's living isolated now in Midian with a dual identity of being both Hebrew, both Egyptian. Anybody relate to that multi-ethnic isolation and loneliness in a white American world? Probably some of you do. And he's in this sense of loneliness and isolation, constructed worldview of both a melting pot, gumbo soup of Egyptian worldview and Hebrew worldview. He's not pursuing Yahweh. He's not pursuing God. He doesn't even know who that is yet. And yet, he's now in a place of deconstruction. He's moving into a place of deconstructing where he is in the wilderness. He's alone. He's questioning. This isn't just like, a lot of times preachers love this because it's true. There's a sense of preparation happening. I'm going to get into that. But this is like post-failure Moses. This is post-violence, post-running for his life. Walter Brueggemann says that Moses is living a settled life of managed expectations. So Moses has made peace with less. He's in this place of his life, right? Anybody ever feel that way where you're just deconstructing what you had, deconstructing what you were raised with? And that's okay. That's necessary. There's these necessary movements of construction, deconstruction. Like, we need to go through that, and that's where Moses is. Like, do you ever feel like a place in your life, for some reason, like you're just being punished? Or you're like, I know this isn't true, but I just feel like God's punishing me. Like, it just feels like something, maybe for my actions. I imagine this may be what Moses felt like. If I had just done that, if I had just not answered that call, if I had just not made that mistake, I wouldn't be in this wilderness. The wilderness, the deconstruction place, let me suggest to you, that dark place serves a purpose in your development under God's hand, even when you do not experience God. When you are in that deconstructing place, it serves a purpose of preparation under God's hand, even when you do not experience Him. And don't despise your Midian. Don't despise your place of deconstruction. Don't despise your desert. Don't harbor your hate against horror, because whatever you are, whoever you are, nothing is wrong with you because you feel like you're in a desert. Despite what you may have heard, nothing is wrong with you. No, something actually may be right with you if you were in the desert, because that is the place that God likes to hide people in obscurity. He likes to take people, bury the best in them until it nurtures them, allows it to grow out of them, and the best that is in you is coming out. So Midian is a sense of preparation where Moses really needs to this is not just a detour, it's preparation. And then God shows up as a fire that does not behave and asks him to participate in delivering his people. So then he meets God through this fire, this burning bush, right? As my kids like to say, that's fire, right? This was the first person to ever say, that's fire, right? Moses. Sorry, got to get the dad jokes in. So he tasted the essential nature of God and was like, this is weird. This is fire. God shows up in unannounced ways. And I want to kind of take a moment here because our name is Epiphany. This is an epiphany. We got to talk about it. The bush interrupts Moses. The voice that tells him to go see the strange thing where the bush is on fire but not consumed, that voice is more of, it's an interruption. It's an interruption in Moses' mundane world of watching sheep eat and poop and sleep and just doing the mundane things that we all do. Um, as we're worried about AI, this is something that always interests me. There's a lot of fear about AI. There's a lot out there that AI is doing. There's a lot of concern. The one thing AI can never do is have an epiphany. That's the one thing that artificial intelligence can never do is have an epiphany. It's something that only humans can do. And there's something very unique about us. For us to be able to have these aha moments, to be transformed, to continue to grow and change and develop. So I want to talk to you a little bit about nature of epiphanies. Epiphany in the dictionary, it's when you have a common experience, you're observing common experiences, and all of a sudden something explodes in your brain, right? And it changes your life. A little tangent here. My family and my son's watching Percy Jackson, and I'm also trying to read the Odyssey, getting ready for the movie. And the Greek god Prometheus, he defies the gods. Prometheus, he decides to give humanity fire, right? But it was against the will of the gods. When Prometheus gives fire to us, it's against the will of the gods. The gods didn't want us to advance. The gods in the Greek mythologies, they didn't want us to grow into our full potential. And the gods were always against our advancement, but here, God of Israel, he's not like those Greek gods. Like our Greek gods, they're kind of fearful of what humanity could become. Our God is not like that. You're not too much. You ever feel like that in the world? Like I'm just too much or I'm not enough. Have you ever heard someone say that? And maybe in a relationship, I'm too much, not enough. You're not too much for God. He's not fearful of you becoming your fullest potential. He's not afraid of you becoming too creative, too innovative, too co-conspirating with him. He's not like those Greek gods. He's more concerned that you're not going to live into all that you were created to be. Jeremiah 33:3 says, "Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." God wants us to continue to walk into our fullest potential. He wants us to move in between these evolving stages of life from construction, deconstruction, and reconstruction. He's the opposite of those Greek gods. He's the God of Egypt. The God you're here today is not the God of Murdoch. It's not the God of Mars. It's not, the God of Amon-Ra. Sorry, I had to get him out there because he's a Lions guy. He's not. He's the God of Yahweh. And this kind of God is one who he took someone who had no expectations. You ever get there in life? I expect nothing now. So I do not have my heart broken. Just expect nothing. And he calls them to be curious. So God does not wait for us to get our act together. He does not interrupt. He interrupts us right where we are. And he teaches us to be curious. And so the first thing, if we want to have an epiphany, the people who have epiphanies are people who are curious. And I don't know if Moses was curious or if he just caused him to be curious, but babies teach us this, right? They're not content with you just feeding them, spoon feeding them. They eventually start to lift the neck. What's going on out there, right? And if we want to continue to grow as humans, we have to continue to be curious. We have to continue to want to know, to maybe some of you, maybe not making progress in your life, maybe feeling stuck. If you're feeling like stagnant, it may be because you stopped being curious. I've met a lot of people in my life that just stop being curious. If you get on the train, this is it. This is it. Yeah, I'm 23. This is all my life. Just here. Nothing. I don't know what's going on around me. Just this, right? Like we have stopped being curious. And here we have God interrupting him, causing him to be curious. It was curiosity that drove Moses to the presence of God. And one of the reasons we are so divided in a culture is we have stopped being curious. We have stopped being curious with people that disagree with us. We have stopped being curious. And I love that he shows up. I had kind of an epiphany as I was preparing for this. I was listening to Rick Rubin's Tetragrammaton podcast, which is the word in Greek for Yahweh. Oh! I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching on Yahweh's name. I am that I am. And Rick Rubin's podcast is named after this. And guess what? Vampire Weekend, Ezra Koenig is on the podcast, and he has a song called Yahweh. It's just a mind explosion. I was like, what is happening? This is the perfect, I have to say this, even if it's not even part of the whole rest of Exodus. So in the podcast, Rick Rubin is interviewing him about God, because his new album says, it mentions God on the front cover. He says, well, I wrote this song when I was his song was very atheistic. He's like, I didn't even know what I was writing about. He says, oh, sweet thing, Zion doesn't love you, Babylon doesn't love you, but you love everything. So he's talking to God. God, this thing out there, this ultimate reality. America doesn't love you, so I could never love you in spite of everything. In the dark of this place, there's the glow of your face. There's the dust on the screen of this broken machine. And I can't help but feel that I've made some mistake, but I let it go. Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. Through the fire and through the flames, you won't even say your name. Only I am that I am. Who could ever live this way? And he says that when I wrote this song, he's like, I don't even know what it was about, but I was an atheist, but looking back now, he says, then I tried to connect with God. There was no connection. I was like, this God's not real. And he says, now I feel this intimate connection with whatever. For him, he says, it's ultimate reality. I feel this intimate connection, but I look back at the song and I see the longing of what I wanted. I see the longing of what I wanted. And some of you are in that place where you're like, I don't even know what I believe anymore. I don't know if I believe. That's okay. But those are the kind of people that often are like, hey, can I talk to you? Like, I don't believe anymore, but I want to talk. And they keep talking about God. I'm like, you say you don't believe, but you keep talking about God. They're like, yeah, I don't believe in this stuff anymore, but I want to talk about God. And there's something in us that just humanly longs. Humanly longs. The same thing that happened to Ezra Koenig. Koenig is happening to you. Like, you're like, I don't understand why I'm drawn to this. And you look at it now and you're like, for Ezra, he says, I look at it now and there was a spiritual yearning. And he says, now there's a different kind of engagement with ultimate reality, coming in contact with what he calls ultimate truth. And Ezra was curious, and I hope you're curious. I hope that no matter where you are, if you're a place where you're like, you know what, I don't believe anymore. I get that. There's times in my life where I'm like, I don't believe in this. And there's times where I'm like, getting up and praying over every one of these chairs this morning, just like, God, would you just come and break into these people's lives? Would you come and meet us? And there's days where I'm like, I don't know. And that's the human reality. This faith that's taught you that faith is all or nothing, that you can't doubt. I want to cuss right now. It's like, it's rubbish, as Paul said. But here we have Moses, who did not even believe in God, and God comes to him in his curiosity. And Pharaoh's work, right? Moses is living in this world, deconstructing this world of control that he grew up with Pharaoh, this world of control that he was now raised in. And now Moses, I'm sure, got a little bit of that control in him. Pharaoh controlled bodies. Pharaoh controlled labor. Pharaoh controlled reproduction. He's controlling our memory and our history. And that probably got into Moses where he's like, you know what? I can't control my world, but I can control these sheep. You ever done that? Oh, everything feels out of control. I can clean this kitchen. I can organize my email. I feel really good. And Moses, probably there's this moment where he meets God and God says, you know what? I refuse to be defined. I refuse to be controlled. I refuse. Your world's predictability and God's power depends on freedom. And then he tells him his name. He goes, well, he begins to speak to him in this passage. Back to the passage here. He says, here I am. He says, Moses. And he says, here I am. Do not come any closer. He says, take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. I think he's saying, hey, remember, you're created, and there's a creator. Like, reconnect with your humanity. And he says, I'm the God of your father, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac and Jacob. And Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look. Next slide. And the Lord said, I've seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. I am concerned about their suffering. So I have to come down and rescue them from the hand of Egyptians and bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites and all the otherites. And how the cry of the Israelites has reached me. And so now I'm going to send you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt. And Moses said, well, suppose I go to the Israelites? and say to them this? Like, what am I going to tell them your name is? Who am I going to tell them who sent me? He's like, first of all, he's like, you got the wrong guy. And God says, tell him I am who I am, which is like, does not make any sense. This is the verb to be. I is who I is. Like, I tell him I be sent you, right? I am sent you. I will be who I will be, maybe. And maybe wrapped subtly into the self-disclosure is a message not just for Moses, but a message for Pharaoh. Basically like, nice try, but you don't get to manage me. I won't be your mascot. I am who I am. But what I love about Moses' name, this self-disclosure of God, his self-disclosure always comes with his character. When he self-discloses his name, he's saying, I'm the God who liberates. I'm the God who sets free. I'm the God who sides with the poor. At the flip side of that, in our world as Christians, when we side with the poor, when we fight against injustice, we don't do it because it's trendy. We don't do it because of our social situation, because we live in a blue city. We do it because it is the character of God. We do it because we follow a Jesus who said, I have come to set the captives free. I have come to side with the poor. The liberation of God is not separated from his character. So when God says, I've heard their cries, it's in the context of him announcing his person. And we have another person in the New Testament who picks up this language, which is why they wanted to kill Jesus, because he used the Greek word that would be translated for Yahweh, I am, and says, I am the bread of life. I am the resurrection. I am the drink that you want. I am the truth and the way and the life. Another way we could translate this today that kind of hits home a little different is us saying, I need a break, and hearing God say, I am. I need a life. I am. Right? I need rest. I am. I need hope. I am. And watch what happens next. Because Moses wants liberation. He wants clarity. He wants a flow chart. He says, this is what you're to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Next slide. Or is that the last one? Prior to that, he says, give me a plan here. Like, who am I going to tell them who sent you, right? Like, what's their name? What am I going to tell them? And God offers presence in this moment, not control. He offers his presence. So I think for Moses, this was not just about escaping the illusion that we can manage God the way Pharaoh manages people. Like he's helping him see that we can't manage God the way Pharaoh managed people. Like you have to set free, you have to deconstruct from this. Many of us are deconstructing from that white Christian nationalist mentality right now. And Moses says, I don't want to sign up for this. You've got the wrong guy, right? He tries to negotiate. But this God, he's like, this isn't really about you. I'm the God here who hears cries. I'm the God who hears pain, and I move. So even if I'm messing up your little rebuilt life, Moses, your little rebuilt life in the wilderness, this little world that you can control, it's not really about you. It's about me. The last slide. So that leads us to the whole arc: oppression, liberation, refinement, meeting God. When we meet God, we're changed forever. And what the irony is, where we're going to head in the future is this movement, go to the next slide, is the entire Exodus pattern for all of Israel. That they experience liberation, they go through the wilderness, they meet God on the mountain, they're changed, and they change others. It's the Exodus pattern, it's the pattern of our life. That we'd be set free from our own oppression or those who oppress us, that would be experience liberation, that would be refined in that, right? We're being refined right now. Those that are seeking liberation, we're refining. How do we do this in love? How do we do this in compassion? We have to meet God, and we have to be changed so we can change others. Amen.